When I think of Christmas, I remember my friend Anne from many years ago, whose husband said of her one time, Anne really wishes there were only 1 month in the year, and she wishes that month were December. And she wishes there were only one day in December, the 25th, because Anne wants Christmas every day. I'm not there. I love Christmas, but I don't think I've got quite that much of an enthusiasm for it. In any case, Christmas is so many things to so many people. It's a cultural event, and it's marked by things like Handel's Messiah and the Nutcracker and gay men's chorus concerts and every Tom, Dick, and Harry's party and so on. It's a family occasion, and it is absolutely de rigueur in many places for you to come home and knit severed friendships and kinships up and to make the family ties stronger, whether you want to, need to, or not. And it's also a commercial Christmas, of course, which has its long arms and everything from Black Friday to the next Black Friday and everything in between. And it's also a religious holiday for a few people, and it is deeply important for those people. But the meaning of Christmas is certainly not owned by Christians, and it is certainly not reserved for those who call themselves followers of Jesus. Why? Well, not just because those other family, cultural, and commercial Christmases have encroached on the religious thing, but because Jesus is known by anybody. Jesus and his message, and Christmas is a part of it, belong to everybody. And everybody has the right, I guess, to make out of it what they need to and want to. For some people, I've got a neighbor across the street from me who claims to have no faith at all. And boy, he and his partner have an elaborate display of Christmas. And, it has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus. It has to do with a holiday when you can decorate your yard. Well, that's what it is for a lot of people. Well, let me tell you where I've come from in a lot of ways. I am Christian. I think you probably know that. And I'm happily so. I'm not one of these people who is ashamed of it or has been unnecessarily burnt by it. In fact, hardly at all. Nonetheless, I recognize that a lot of people do. And my argument is not to convince you to be where I am at all. And I want to tell you that what I have learned is that the stories about the birth of Jesus, which you see acted out on grand scales in many, many places, certainly within churches and pageants and that kind of thing, and also on television and lots of other places, are all stories that don't even pretend to be factual. Now, a lot of Christians don't believe that. They argue tooth and nail about the factuality of Scripture and this and that. It's a big divide on both sides between liberals and conservatives and whatnot. But the truth of the matter is that those stories are not from the same source, nor are they telling the same story in the same way. In fact, they're mutually exclusive in a lot of ways. I'll let you go figure out, or I'll talk to you at a later time about how they're not the same. But shepherds and keeping watch over their flock by night and the angel coming upon them and this and that is one story with its own agenda. And the wise men coming from the east to Bethlehem to look for him who was born King of the Jews, for they had seen his star in the east and had come to worship him with elaborate gifts and so on. That's a whole different story with a different agenda, and from a different author and from a different source, and it makes different points. And these two things are independently commenting on the specialness of the birth and the specialness of the person, but they're not interested in arguing or even presenting for argument a historical set of facts or a set of historical facts. No, they aren't. They are interested in asking the question of, so what does this mean for you? And that is what I really want to suggest that we think about. What does it mean for you? I came to conclude a number of years ago that all of these stories, not just the Christmas ones, but all of the stories in the Gospels, like all the stories in the Hebrew or Hindu lore, and all the stories in Buddhist lore and other traditions as well, are not necessarily about something that happened a long time ago to an individual in a particular historical context, but they are rather about eternal verities, eternal truths that are experienced in human life whenever and wherever. And that includes our lives, and it includes you and me today. So the question for me is, all right, so where does new life happen to you or me? Where is new life happening in my life and in yours? And I think it doesn't take us long before we can say, well, here it is. This is new. This is a new challenge, a new opportunity, a new prospect, a new hope. In some cases, literally a new life, a new relationship, a new marriage, a new job, a new career, a new home. There's a lot of new life that is happening in a lot of lives these days. Too little in some lives, but a great deal of it is happening in other lives, and almost in everybody's life in one way or another. That's something that keeps us going. And one of the things that's always true about new life is there's always at least the threat of that life being obliterated, about it's being damaged, about it's being squelched, extinguished perhaps. If you've had a new baby, and I raised two, then you know what I'm talking about. You're never quite sure that you're home free, no matter how old they get. Mine are two women in their 40s now, and one of them just was seriously ill for a brief period of time. And the parental side of me remembers so many times when she and her sister were children, and when the new life that their mother and I had so rejoiced about when it began was threatened by one thing or another. Never, in our case, too serious a threat, but there's always this specter of what can happen to snuff out life. And that can happen. You get a new job, all of a sudden you lose it. You get a new home, all of a sudden it's gone, or someone foreclosed on you or whatever. You get a new opportunity and it disappears, or you're in a new relationship and within 6 months or a year or two it's soured and has become onerous, and in some cases just dead. And so it goes. So that's not unusual. It's a part of the universal fabric of things. There's always construction and destruction. They go on in complementarity all the time, and there is no way to say only and always new life, new life, new life. No, new life ages, new life dies, new life falls sick. But there's always the hope that there will always be another chance, another hope, or whatever. That is a part of the cycle, and it's an important one. So where's new life going on in your life? The second thing that I would ask you is, so where do you find that the flesh, your body, is involved in this new life? Now, let me unpack that just a little bit. There's another story that is about the birth of Jesus, but it is not a birth narrative as such, certainly not in competition with Luke or Matthew in any sense. It's a very different kind of thing. It comes from the fourth gospel, who says in his few opening volleys, the Word, the Logos, was made flesh. The Word was made flesh. And by that he means this eternal principle, this logos, this the rational principle, if you will, the principle around which all things are organized, the creative principle, becomes actually embodied in a human being. Now, you can't stop with that, because ultimately what's going to happen is that that one case of embodiment is actually a case of a universal phenomenon. The Word that became flesh is also going to become flesh again and again and again in you and in me and in dozens of others. And one can push that even further out to say that it's not just people who are physically and willingly and consciously united in some sense to this one incarnation that has been known in Jesus, but anybody is an incarnation of the force, the creative love that brought us all here and brought all things into being. There's a Christian vocabulary that says that, but there are many other vocabularies and many other ways of putting the same thing. So, where is your flesh involved? How does your flesh manifest the sacred? Well, without being too graphic and too specific, I think that I can tell you a few things that we can say in the most general of terms. Again, it doesn't depend on what particular vocabulary you use, but your senses, your eyes, your ears, your skin, your tongue, your nose, your olfactory sense, all of these things are the ways by which your inner life, your inner reality, your deep nature, or what I call the soul, experiences what it needs to experience in order to grow, in order to discern what is the territory over which it moves, in order to discern what it likes and what it's attracted to, and so on. And you know how that plays out in your everyday life. I mean, it is your sense of taste and your sense of smell working in concert with each other that tells you what kind of food you really like. Well, that's just one little example of how it is that your senses work to inform your soul. And by soul, I mean your deep nature, the who you really are, and who you're capable of being, and who you're, in my language, who you're created to be, who you're made to be. Well, the flesh then is important. And then there is one other thing, and that is you cannot talk about flesh unless you are willing to talk about mortality, because that's what flesh is. It's mortal. It grows, it sickens, and ultimately it dies at various rates along the way. And the mortality that I'm thinking about is a mortality that is inescapable. Now, the interesting thing to me about a lot of religious systems is that they want to bypass that and to skip over the death part and to begin talking about immortality or afterlife or whatever. I submit that the story of Christmas is precisely the opposite. It is about embracing mortal life. It is about embracing vulnerability. It is about embracing, honoring, and living out a life that is subject to the powers of death and destruction. That's ultimately where the story of Jesus goes. But it's not just Jesus. It's about any of the prophets. It's about any of the wise people. It's about anybody who has ever stuck his or her neck out in order to be a witness. You run the risk at the very least of being grossly misunderstood, sometimes vilified, sometimes killed. That is the way of the world. And it is the positing of another way of life that embraces mortality and is unafraid to be authentic, in opposition to the forces of the world, economic, social, familial, religious, educational, juridical, or whatever those systems are, in order to express oneself to the fullest possible degree. So embracing mortality is not wanting to die necessarily, but it is about being unafraid of death. It's about living in a way that is not hamstrung on trying to preserve life. Somebody once said, and you can guess who if you don't already know, if you would save your life, you'll lose it. It's as simple as that. But if you don't fear to lose your life, if you will take the risk of being authentic, of embracing your humanness, of identifying in solidarity with other creatures, other humans, and the rest of creation, if you do that fearlessly, courageously, you'll find your life. Those things to me are the clues as to where Christmas connects with you and me. It's where Christmas and our erotic life flow together. Because what impassions us, what fuels us, what sparks us, what attracts us, and what we deeply desire, all of those things that are so much a part of our erotic experience are the very places where new life shows up, where new life can be threatened and squelched, and where we have the possibility of bravely embracing all of that in order to be who we are. So I hope you look back at Christmas 2021 and say, that was a good Christmas. No matter how you celebrate it or what it means to you or which of these three ways or some other way are the places that Christmas actually grabs you. Have a bash, have a party, blow it out, celebrate. If you're a believer, then go worship, pray. If you're a man, well, you've got parts that are waiting to be celebrated, to have some attention paid to them. If you're in a relationship, make fabulous love. Enjoy every minute of it, and may in 2022 or sometime down the pike you look back and say, that was a great Christmas, because I hope you have one. I love you. Take care, and I'll talk to you next month.